Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a square using a gyro sensor. So before we begin programming the bot, let's look at what a gyro sensor looks like and how it works. So here's my bot, and this is a gyro sensor. It is the one that has the two red arrows and the circle in the middle, the little red circle in the middle. Now, you need to attach your gyro sensor somewhere on the sides of the bot and make sure that it is facing forward. Also, I have mine plugged into port 1. You can choose any port you want, but again, mine is plugged into port 1. And I'm going to show you how it works and what it does. So, the gyro sensor, how it works is it measures the rate of rotation in either degrees or angles. So right here on my computer, you can see I'm looking in the port view, and port 1 is where my gyro sensor is. Right now it's set to 0 because I'm not moving it. There's also a drift problem sometimes where this will fluctuate even if it's at a standstill, and we're going to go over that a little later. But over here, it lets you measure an angle or rate. So I'm going to show you when I turn the bot ever so slightly, you can see how the numbers change because it's now in angles. It's measuring the angles that I'm turning. And if I wanted to go the other way, it'll start going down and turn into negative numbers. You can say, and you can do the same thing to measure in rate as well. I again showed you how to measure through the angle, but you can do it in rate too. If you want to reset the gyro, you can just hit the reset value. So the problem with this sensor is it's not always accurate, which means you're going to have to play with the numbers and tweak them to correct the turn, meaning that a 90-degree turn isn't always a perfect 90-degree turn. Sometimes you may have to make it 86 degrees in order to make a 90-degree turn. And part of that problem is because there seems to be two issues with the gyro. It can drift and it can lag. So drift makes the gyro keep changing even when the robot isn't moving. So when my robot was in this position, sometimes for no reason at all, over here, you would see this still moving. And that would cause a drift. And the other thing is sometimes it lags, which it delays the reading of the gyro. And there are no real blocks to fix this problem, but people have put out ways that you could reset it or calibrate the gyro sensor to help this from not happening. So we are going to actually use in our program a couple blocks to help it from not drifting. And we'll see how that works. So before we put our program together, the first thing we need to do is name our program. Let's call it making a square. And let's also save this project. File, save project, and we'll name it Gyro Sensor. So if we wanted to use the gyro sensor to do any other projects, we can keep it into this project folder. So hit the save button. So let's start programming our square using our gyro sensor. The first three blocks we're going to use are going to help us with drifting because it's going to calibrate the gyro sensor. So the first thing we need is to go into our sensor blocks and choose the gyro sensor. And we're going to set this to measure the rate. We want it to first measure the rate. Then we're going to bring another gyro sensor in, but this time we're going to want it to measure the angle. And the last thing we need is a weight block. And the reason we put the weight block in there at the end is because it takes time for the gyro sensor to reset back to 0. So we're going to put in our flow control, bring a weight block out, and we're going to tell it to wait 0.1 seconds. So now that we have our first three blocks into our program, these are the ones that are going to help reset or what they might call calibrate the gyro sensor, we're going to move on and add some blocks to help us start making our square. So the first block we want to add is in the Action tab. We want to bring a Move Steering block in. And we want to keep it on rotations, and we want it to go straight, and I'm going to keep the speed at 50, but I do want to change this to 3 rotations. So we want it to go for 3 rotations until we tell it to do something else. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring a large motor block in. Now, what I want the bot to do is I want it to go straight for 3 rotations, then turn right. And the first thing you need to do is check your large motor on the right side and find out what port it's connected to. Mine's connected to port B, so I can leave mine at B. Make sure yours is connected to, check which port it's connected to. So again, we want to make the right motor turn on continuously. So I have this on continuously at the speed of 50. So it's going to continue turning until we tell it to do something different. The until statement means we need to use a wait block. So this time we're going to use a wait block, but we're going to set it to the gyro sensor. So we're going to down to our flow control, bring a wait block out, and we're going to bring it down to the gyro sensor. And we want to look for a certain degree of change in the gyro sensor. So we're going to hit change angle. We want it to look for a different change in the angle. And we're going to change it to increase, which is 0 right here. Increase, you have a choice of decrease and any. We want it to increase by 90. So let's see what we have so far in this program. The first 3 blocks, the gyro sensor, and the wait block, reset the gyro sensor back to 0. So you can always see it in the port when you're running it over here. Then we move forward 3 rotations, right here, 3 rotations, and then we make a right turn until we add, this is increase, till we add 90 degrees to the gyro sensor. So as I stated earlier, sometimes due to the drift or lag, a 90-degree turn may not be perfect. And you may have to adjust that number slightly lower than 90. But we'll see when we run our final program to see how that works for us. Block we need to add is another Move Steering block. So we'll go down to the Action tab and grab a Move Steering block. And this time we want to shut off the motors. So right now we have 1 line of the square down, but we want to do the same pattern 4 more times. So in order to do this, we're going to put everything we have right here in a loop. So let's go down to our Flow Control tab, grab a Loop tab, and put it onto the front. And now we're going to highlight everything we have so far and throw it inside the loop. So the first thing I like to do is I'm going to name the loop. I'm going to call it a square. You can name it anything you like. And we want to make this loop go 4 times. So if we come over here, instead of keeping it to unlimited, we're going to pull this down and change on count. And since we only wanted to do it 4 times, we're going to choose 4. So now this loop should go 4 times because we set the count to be 4. The last thing I want to do is just something a little fun. I just want to put some sound at the very end when it makes the square. I want it to cheer. So we're going to go down to the Action tab again, and this time we're going to pull out a Sound tab and put it right outside our loop. And we're going to keep it on play file. I'm going to keep it at 100. You can lower the sound if you want. And then we're going to choose a sound from the file, the Lego files, the Lego sound files. We're going to go down and choose, I believe it's an expression, yes. In expression, we're going to hit cheering. You can choose whichever sound you want. And then we're going, you have a choice here to have it wait for completion, play once, or repeat. We're just going to have it set to wait for completion. So this now, at the very end, after it goes 4 times, you will hear a cheering sound. The last loop we need is a move steering block at the very end. And we want the motors to stop. So we're just going to say turn off, and that will end our program. So now that everything's done, we have our loop, we have our cheer at the end. Let's go ahead and download this into our EV3 brick and test it and see how accurate it is. When I tested my robot on the carpet, it made perfect 90-degree turns using the program we used. You'll see in the next video, when I did it on the floor, I had slightly different results. You can see that the bot was off a little. So here's the test using the floor. My bot seemed to be off just a little, which could be part of that drifting lagging problem. It might have had better tension on the rug, which is why I'm telling you might need to play with those numbers. So I think the program for the gyro sensor worked pretty well to make the square. There might have to be some adjustments over here in the weight block to lower the degree from 90 when you're using it on the floor. Maybe it would have been best if it was set to like 86, 87. Again, you have to play around with these numbers and these figures, but this is a good basic program for learning how to make a square with the gyro sensor. So I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I look forward to offering you more tutorials in the near future.